Hello, everybody. I want to read a quote first before I start. It's from Dr. Steve Best, and it goes like this. If we eliminate all the bogus arguments that are used to support human supremacy, it comes down to this. Rights are a legal and moral construct to protect any being that has an interest in living well rather than a living hell. Animal exploiters always complain about us and they say that we seek to take away their freedom. Well, damn right we are. We're here to take away rights that you should have never had. We are here to stop an immoral society that generates profit and money from an economy of slavery. So what rights should animals have? If they have wings, they should have the right to fly. If they have legs, they should have the right to run. If they have fins, they should have the right to swim. They should have the right to live their own lives as they choose. They should have the right to be with their families, and they should have the right to a natural environment that's not degrading and to enjoy their lives. They should have the right to self-determination, free from exploitation. We are not fighting for reform, but for revolution, for the end of slavery and for a new consciousness. Because animals are not ours to exploit. They are not food, clothing, resources for research, sport, or entertainment. They exist for their own purpose, not ours. Everybody agree? Yeah. So, first things first. I don't think the organisers, nobody has thanked the organisers yet, so I want to do it if that's okay. This event has been incredible today. I walked in here this morning and I thought, holy shit, this is amazing. So to everybody who's been involved with the organisation, to all the speakers who have come today to speak, to all the amazing activists and vegans in the room, and for the people who organised the food and stuff as well, give them all a big round of applause because it's been amazing. So, some of you will know me, some of you won't. I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory and why I'm an activist. I've loved animals my entire life since I was a little kid, and I had a few incidents that happened during my childhood, but one really important event happened when I was 10 years old. Me and my friend used to play football every day at the front of our house. And this day, we were kicking a football back and forward. Now, our house was about 1.5 miles to drive to the local abattoir or slaughterhouse. But it was actually just across two fields that connected the two roads. And we're kicking the ball, and this day I see a white cow, running across the field. And then immediately behind her came two men, dressed top to toe in white. They were wearing green tabards, green Wellington boots, splattered in blood, carrying sticks. And they chased her into the corner of the field and they began to beat her. And really viciously, they were beating her across the head, across the legs, across the back. And she eventually fell onto the ground and they continued to beat her. And at this point, me and my friend were shouting like involuntarily, "Hey, stop. What are you doing? Stop." But they just continued. And my dad was in the house and he came running out and seeing what was happening and he was shouting too. And it seemed to go on for an age. And then a van appeared and came across the field, like an old Ford van. And a guy got out and they tied ropes and chains around her legs. And they drove off across the field, dragging her behind them. And I was really... still upsets me to this day. And I remember asking my dad, what the heck just happened? Why would anybody do such a thing? And he told me that the cow had escaped from the abattoir and had ran for her life. And those men had came and taken her back to where she would be murdered. And I was like, I think it was a moment of realization. I hadn't even, at 10 years old, and 1978 it would have been, I had no information. Nobody told me anything. And that was a defining moment that opened my mind up. Now, I didn't go vegan straight away. I didn't even know what vegan was in the 1980s. There was no computers. I didn't really read books. I never went to the library. But it set me off on a mental journey that led me to, by the time I was 19, I'd given up eating all animal products. I was still wearing leather through my adult life, still using cosmetics. I hadn't even considered that cosmetics may contain animal products or be tested on animals. And then it was like 14 years ago, somebody sent me Urofsky's speech on the internet in work one day, and I sat and I watched it, and I was like, I can't argue with a single word, and I went vegan overnight. And almost immediately after I went vegan, I became an activist. So in the past, I've been an organizer with AV. I was an organizer for 2 Save Vigils. I've been to all of the rebellions in London with Animal Rebellion, Meet the Victims, just anything. And there's people in this room that I've done all that stuff with. Anything that I could do to try and help animals. And then 5 years ago, COVID hit, and everybody was scared, like I was too, and couldn't get people to come out onto the street. And like I say, I was scared too for the first couple of weeks. And then one day, there's a Cranswick about 1.5 miles from where I live, a literal gas chamber just up the road. And I saw a lorry of pigs, and it was actually Thomas. I said to him, I can't rightly sit in the house. Okay, there's a risk to go out, but I cannot rightly sit in the house and not do something. So I started to go onto the streets, at first with Thomas, and then I was going out by myself. And just, there was hardly anybody about, but we were just trying to talk to people and trying to make change in the best way that we knew how. So that just continued, and then I started recording and putting stuff on Instagram. And I would encourage everybody to, if you are doing outreach on the streets, to record it. This does not come from ego, it's just to show you. This is what I record with. This little camera here, I bought it secondhand. This. And without ego, just to show you the difference that you can make. I've now nearly almost 50,000 followers on Instagram, and I have 2 reels this year that have over 10 million views. And I'm getting messages all the time from everywhere, from people saying, I see your stuff online, I can't argue with you, I'm going vegan. So honestly, record, and you can talk to one person on the street at a time, or maybe 2 people, and you've got 10 minutes with them, but you can record that conversation, and somebody somewhere is going to watch that and think, I have the same question and I've just heard it debunked. So you can reach thousands of people with a second-hand, 150-pound GoPro strapped onto a lamppost with a bungee cord. So it's literally that simple. Don't overly complicate it. And yeah, I have a good camera as well. I'm not going to set that camera up in the middle of Belfast when I'm on my own, but I know a woman in Australia who goes out and she records on her phone and she handwrites her signs, and the phone was second-hand. I think she said she got it for like $40 or something, so you don't have to spend a lot of money to be an activist. So yeah, that's my story, and I just feel determined and relentless to go out there and speak for other animals. That's what it's all about. It's not about followers for me, it's about making a difference for them. So I thought I'd break this into 2 parts today. I'll talk to you about my activism at the end, but it's an animal rights conference, and I was thinking to myself, when we say animal rights, what the hell do we actually mean? I wasn't too sure myself. Like, I had to sit and think about it. And these are things that I've only learned recently. When we talk about inalienable rights, what do we actually mean? Or when we talk about negative and positive rights, has anybody heard that before? Negative and positive rights, has anybody heard that? So they're 2 different things. Negative rights, for anyone who doesn't know, is bodily autonomy. It's all about consent. It's about being able to live your life as you please without somebody interfering with you. And positive rights just means that there is a requirement from somebody else to do something to help you. So the number one thing that animals should have when we talk about rights is personhood. Animals are not objects, they're not things. I brought a pencil up here. This is a thing. This is a thing. I can do that to a thing, and nobody cares, apart from environmentally, maybe. But with things that you own, things that are property, you can do whatever the fuck you want, right? When somebody has personhood, that gives you protection under the law. So that's what we really want, for animals to be considered as people too. Animals are people too. And that's just not my opinion. That is factually how it is. So a couple of years ago, I actually sat and wrote out a bill of animal rights. And I've changed it many times over the months. It's like the American Constitution. It's got like 27 amendments. So there's only 12, and they're only a couple of sentences long. But this is, from my perspective, what we should be asking for when we talk about animal rights. These are the 12 things. And afterwards, if you're talking to me or later on and you say, oh, you got that one wrong, or you've worded this incorrectly, that's completely fine. It's like an open conversation. But these are the 12 things that I think are basic, absolutely flipping basic when we're talking about other animals. So as I go through them, I'll read them out, each one, and then I'll ask you to show a hand. Just put your hands up if you agree with each one as we go through them. So the first one is, all non-human animals have an equal claim to existence as human beings. Do you agree with that? These might get a wee bit more radical as we go along. Second one, all animals are entitled to the respect and dignity that corresponds with their right to existence. Everyone agrees again. Human beings do not have the right to exploit and kill any other species of animal. Everyone agree? Number 4, breeding and farming of animals for profit is strictly prohibited. Animals have the right to care and protection by humanity to the best of our ability. Everybody's putting their hands up, by the way, but like I say, this is a very basic ask. No animal should be poorly treated, subjected to cruel acts, abuse, or neglect, and this rule is extended to all animals without discrimination. Wild animals have the right to liberty and procreation in a natural, healthy environment in accordance with the needs of their species, and destruction of natural habitats is a criminal offence. Everybody agrees? Almost there. Deprivation of any animal's freedom for any reason, including science, sport, education, work, service, and entertainment for human benefit is strictly prohibited. Just about everybody again. Human caretakers of companion animals from now forward will be referred to as guardians. The animals are not pets, and we are not their owners or masters. Guardians have a responsibility to provide for companion animals in a way that facilitates the animal's natural lifespan and provide appropriate love and care. I think there's just 2 more. Subjecting any animal to cruel or degrading acts, exploitation, or abandonment is a criminal offence. And the last one, I think, any act involving physical or psychological harm is incompatible with respecting the rights of non-human animals and is a criminal offence. So would everybody agree that that's, like, for us, really basic level stuff? Like, that may be portrayed as an extreme ask. I don't see it that way at all. When you consider that animals can feel pain and suffer and want to be with their families, they feel sadness, they feel all the emotions that we feel. By what right, quo warranto, is the Latin for, by what right do we deny them? Who the hell do we think we are that we can deny our animals those basic rights? And when we ask for these things and we go onto the streets and talk to people, people chuck all this stuff at us. They say things like, you're equating other animals to humans. And I'll say, well, by what reason do you think animals are more important than human beings? And normally they'll say something like, oh, God created us, or we're more intelligent. Well, if God created us, you're anti-science, and I would ask you to prove it, is number one. And yeah, human beings are more intelligent than other animals. Most human beings are more intelligent than other animals. But do we not realize when we ask that question that we're operating from a position of huge bias? We pick the one evolutionary trait that human beings have excelled at and then say, well, other animals don't live up to that standard. So what if the animals were setting the criteria? What if the criteria was who's the fastest runner, who's the best climber, who can fly? We don't get to set the criteria for other animals and then say, you don't level up, we're the best, so fuck you. That's not how it should work. It's how it works now in society, but it's not how it should work. And they say things like, oh, well, if you're an abolitionist, I'm an abolitionist, by the way, you're extreme. Well, what is extreme about wanting to abolish slavery? What's extreme about wanting to stop people from taking animals into slaughterhouses, shooting them in the head, putting them in gas chambers, cutting them into parts, and then selling them? That is the extreme position. Abolition is not the extreme position. It's just a complete and utter reversal, a misrepresentation of how it actually is. And they say things like, oh, you're anti-human, you're a misanthrope. You're a misanthrope because you care about other animals more. Well, who the flip are these people that are saying that can so monumentally misrepresent our movement? Because I've been in the vegan movement for a long time, and I know a lot of people who do things for human rights as well. They go to the anti-war protests. They work with people with mental health, people who are teachers, people who do rape counselling, people who look after children. We are not anti-human. We are pro other animals, but we are not anti-human. That's just an absurdity. And they say, liberationists, you're terrorists. You're terrorists. Absolutely absurd and twisted point of view. To say, so say you were in a concentration camp, and I broke in and broke you out and took you to slavery and took you to sanctuary, that I'm the terrorist. I'm the terrorist. But the people who are enacting violence on other animals are normal. Like, society has it so twisted. So twisted. And I just want to say thank God for the ALF and anyone who has ever risked their freedom and their liberty to free other animals and take them to sanctuary. I respect anyone who's done that so much, and we all should. To save someone's life in that manner is an unbelievable thing to do. And I've heard people say to me, oh, you're anti-jobs, you're trying to take my livelihood away from me. Well, yeah, I am. You can do something else. So the way I think about it is, thank you. The way I think about that is the tobacco industry. People have jobs in the tobacco industry and they earn a bunch of money and they pay their bills with that money, but I don't advocate that people should smoke just because it keeps somebody in a job. And the prison industry is exactly the same. Loads of people make money in the prison industry, but I don't advocate that we throw innocent people in prison just because it keeps somebody in a job and allows them to pay their bills. And the arms industry, the same. Millions of people work in the arms industry, making weapons and bombs and bullets and guns and all sorts, but I don't advocate that we should shoot innocent people just because it keeps somebody in a job. So by the same logic, I don't advocate that we should enslave and farm animals just because it keeps somebody in a job. Do something else. Do something else. Humans are very good at adaptation. And they tell us we're anti-science as well. But if we look at climate and we look at the environment and we look at health, all the science is on our side. All the science is on our side. And we look to evolution as well. We accept evolution. We accept common ancestry. We accept, I mean, if we do all the experiments I've ever read on animals to see how intelligent they are or if they feel pain or whatever, animals always exceed expectation. They always turn out to be much smarter than we thought. So we've got science on our side as well. And I think it's in the 17th century, René Descartes said, animals are unthinking and unfeeling. What a pile of crap. So thank God he's dead, to be honest. And thank God that line of thinking is also dead as well, because we know that animals think and feel just like us. So that's that part. I'll talk to you now about my activism and how I think we can make change. And look, I'm no guru. I am just, who said it earlier, a pleb with a microphone on the street who records his activism. I don't know any better than anybody else in this room. So these are just my thoughts about activism. And I think if I was asked the question, I think the consumer is to blame. I think the consumer is to blame. So that's why I go onto the street and talk to the consumer, because all these industries are led by supply and demand. And if you take away the demand, then the supply goes as well. And I see growth in the movement. Some people have different ideas than me, and they think we should speak to government and business and corporations, and that's how change will come. And I completely disagree with that. I'm not saying they're wrong, I just disagree. I see it as a grassroots movement, okay? And then people will say to me, but Clif, you can only speak to one person at a time and it's not enough. Well, number one, I've already shown you the power of recording your conversations and putting them online. And number two, exponential growth. I think it was spoken about earlier. So one person can change another person. So I think roughly there's 78 million people in the UK. Somebody correct me if that's wrong. And let's say there's 1 million vegans, right? Let's say there's 1 million vegans. And if each one of those make it their business to speak to one person this year and make that one person vegan, well then next year we have 2 million. And if we go to the next year and say, well, you 2 million people speak to one person this year and get that person to go vegan, then we have 4 million, and then we have 8 million, and then we have 16 million. That's where change will come from. Change will come from the bottom up, from the power of the people. And then we can talk to government and business and corporations about making change. That's how I believe it will happen. So when I do my outreach, I have some words that are pertinent to me. I wrote down the words that make me relentless. I feel really driven. Like I say, I live near a Cranswick and I see the trucks all the time, and I just want to see the trucks pull my car in front of the lorry and get out and open the lorry and let the animals free. And that's not practical. It's in the world that we live in, that just can't be a thing. So the next best thing for me is to go onto the street and ask other people to be vegan as well. The least people can do, the very least anyone can do is fucking be vegan and leave animals alone. Don't pay for animal exploitation. Okay, so the next step after that is activism. The very, very least thing that any decent human being can do is be vegan. And so these are five things that I wrote down that drive my activism and drive me to be on the streets so much. And the first one is pain. So I don't know, it's from the things that happened to me when I was young. You could probably hear in my voice when I was talking about that cow. That's 47 years ago, and I still can't talk about that without feeling it in here. So I have a pain inside me that I feel for other animals. If anybody watches my videos, you'll hear me saying all the time, animals are innocent. I see animals and children the same. They're completely innocent. They can't speak for themselves. They're not in a position. Animals can speak. They can speak their own language that we don't understand, and they can communicate, but they're not in a position to speak for themselves. So who's going to do it? Who's going to speak for them? Us, right? Has to be us. So we have to go on the streets, or we have to be active to try and do something. So I literally beg you to do some form of activism. You don't have to do what I'm doing. There are many different things you can do. So if you don't want to go out on your own like me, join a We the Free chapter or an AV chapter. Go out with those guys. A lot of you are going out with them tomorrow. Do that. Join a Save Vigil group. Write posts online. Do anything. Anything that you feel you're capable of doing. We all have. None of us, well, we're all special, but none of us are any better than anyone else, and we all have talents in places that we don't even know that we have. I think mine is, when I'm on the street, is patience. Because there are times I want to grab people and just frickin' punch them, to be honest. But we all have talents. I urge you to use those talents to speak for those animals, because they can't for themselves, and it's on us. We're the only hope that they have. The second one is persistent. I don't give up easily, and I'm not talking about in conversation usually, although I will persist if I think the conversation is worthwhile. But there are many days I go onto the streets and I could stand for an hour and a half and not one person stops with me. Not one person. I go out other days and 10 people will stop in a half hour. But we all have bad days during activism. We all have terrible conversations and frustrations and arguing with people. But just persist. Keep going. Don't give up. I've seen me stand on the street for an hour and a half and not one person turns up, and I'm freezing cold. And I think, right, I'll go and get a coffee, and I'll go and buy myself a coffee somewhere, and I'll sit for half an hour and I take a few deep breaths, and I say to myself, something good's going to happen here. I'm going to have a good conversation today. I'm going to make it happen. And I go back out, and more times than enough, I will have a really good conversation. That happened just the other day, and the guy messaged me 2 days ago and said he's going vegan, and he's asked me a ton of questions, but it just shows you I'd stood for 2 hours that day, and right at the death, a guy and his girlfriend turned up, and now we have a new vegan. So be persistent, don't give up. The third of 5 I have is be proficient and practice. When I first started doing outreach on the streets, I was freaking terrible. I hadn't a clue what I was doing. I lost a lot of conversations. I let people gish gallop a lot. I don't know if you don't know what that is. It's when somebody says something like, "What about protein?" and you debunk it, and they've immediately gone on. They don't accept that you've debunked the point that they made. They just pass it by and go straight on to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And I learned one day, James Aspey was over in Belfast back in the day, a long time ago, when he was doing street activism, and a guy was trying to gish gallop with him. And James put his hand on his chest, and he said, "Man, let me answer your first point, and then I'll get to that." And I learned something that day, that people will jump from one thing to one thing to one thing to one thing. So you learn skills, and you learn from other activists as well. I learned everything that I knew from watching Joey Carbstrong and Ed at Trafalgar Square back in the day, and James Aspey and people doing street outreach, and Paul Bashir, who's arrived now, I think you see here at the back. These are the people I learned from. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I didn't know what to say, what are the good debunks, what are the right arguments, how to deal with people. I've just learned over time. And I also learned by going to Cubes of Truth and listening to other activists. So believe it or not, if you go to a Cube of Truth, right, and you're new to the game and you're worried about conversations, one of the best things that you can do is stand in the cube with a sign or a TV and listen to people who have been doing it for a while and listen to what they say. And even if you are an activist who's been around the game for 2 or 3 years, there's always better ways to say things. I've stood in a Cube of Truth with a TV, and I'll be listening to a conversation, and they're talking about something that I'll debunk in a certain way, and the activist will say something else, and I'd be like, do you know what? That's a better way to say it. I'm going to adopt that. So you can always learn, and you can always be better. And the best way, practice makes perfect. So go onto the streets as much as you can. And you will, let me tell you, if you go onto the streets in any city centre, you will learn really fast how to deal with people. And one piece of advice when you are going onto the streets, and you may think, shit, I don't know the answers. I don't know what to say here. One thing that really helped me back in the day, and it's still available online as an online download book, or you can watch it on YouTube, is Earthling Ed's 30 Days, 30 Excuses. So it's 30 of the most common arguments that people will say to you when you're on the street, and succinct and clear debunks to those arguments. It's a really neat way, if you're not overly proficient or overly keyed up, to learn how to answer people. The fourth one of 5 is I am principled to the core. So when you see me on the street with a sign, people will come at me sometimes and they're like, why do you use the word abuse? I use the word abuse because that's an inflammatory word, and everybody wants to tell me they're against abuse. I'm just dragging them into a conversation. That's all the sign is for. Of course I'm against abuse, but I'm against exploitation and use. I'm a deontologist, if anybody knows what that is, at my core. So there's 2 schools of thought in animal rights. One is utility and one is deontology. So I'm a deontologist, and deontology is basically about bodily autonomy and consent. So let me give you an example, an extreme example of utility versus deontology. Utility, if I was to say to the room, you don't have to put your hands up, it's just a thought experiment. We have a baby pig here, and if you allow me to experiment on this baby pig, cancer will be cured worldwide, and millions of people's lives will be spared. A utilitarian would say, well, obviously, I want the pig to suffer, but this is the greater good over here. This is the greater good. Therefore, go ahead. My position as a deontologist would be that it is wrong to deny anybody their bodily autonomy without their consent. Animals cannot consent. Therefore, we should leave them alone. Their life is important to them. And for me, it doesn't matter who stands to gain. It doesn't matter who stands to gain from doing something bad to somebody else. My position is always at root that without consent, that we should leave that person alone. And when I say person, I'm talking about animal persons. You may not agree, but that's my position. And the last one is, I don't want this to sound like ego at all. When I go and I do my activism, I do so with a sense of pride. And it's pride that I feel so much empathy and compassion for the other animals. And when we're activists, it's one of the, in fact, it may be the only justice movement that the victims will never be able to thank you. They will never be able to thank you. So I feel proud of myself that I go out there. I'm on the streets 4 or 5 days a week, and I have been for the past 3 or 4 years now. I do it relentlessly to speak for them. And yeah, I guess pride is a terrible word because people tend to think you're speaking from ego when you talk about pride. But I am proud of what I've done. I'm proud of how many people I've made vegan. Not because of me, but because of the information I've told them. So yeah, that's about it. I started off with a reading that was written by somebody else. And I just want to finish. It's just short. It's a few lines that I wrote myself just to finish off. And it's about being an activist in animal rights. And I wrote, as an animal rights activist, I believe that animals deserve the same moral consideration as humans. I want all animals to be free of suffering and death for human benefit, whether they're slaughtered for food, clothing, or used as test animals in laboratories. My belief is that no animal should be caged, beaten, stripped of their dignity, or killed just so as I can have what I want for lunch. They have value far beyond what they're worth by the kilo. They have the capacity to feel pain, love, stress, and even longing. They feel as we do, and their rights should be respected and values not as a second thought, but as our first. So change starts with awareness and education. And if you're willing to live by your values and tell others about them, you can 100% make a real difference in this world. So I urge you to speak up for the other animals, amplify their story, and please join all the other activists in this fight. The animals need you. Thank you. If anybody wants to ask a question, you can go ahead. I was going to say, when I'm on the streets of Belfast, I'm always looking for little signs when people walk past. And I've got my DMs on today, and when I'm standing on the street in Belfast and people are walking up and down, I'm always seeing DMs, and I'm always looking for the little yellow tab, and it feels great to be in a room with people. I've seen several about today, and it's always the little yellow tab, so it's great. It's great to share a room with people that are like-minded.
Thank you so much, Clif, for this great speech. I just wanted to mention something, two things. You mentioned that the animals don't give consent. I feel like sometimes they do not give consent, like they refuse to have anything done to them by their screams, the way they look into our eyes, and just the way they act. So this is the opposite of consent, right?
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing was that I do feel that some animals are thankful, like when I go to a lake and the swamps come up to me. They don't come up to the non-vegan next, but they come up to me. Yesterday I was in Ireland and cows came up to me at an abbey, and I was actually doing some outreach with some non-vegans right as these cows came up to me, and they came in my direction, not. So I think that would be the thankfulness. So on some occasions that's...
I actually agree with you, man. Cows are my favorite animal, by the way. I flipping love cows. They're such docile, gentle animals. But yes, I fully agree with you. Many of you may not agree, but animals absolutely know who's good to them and who's not. Animals can sense that energy from human beings. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Anybody else?
Thank you for your talk. I have a question about positive rights. So this is a bit controversial, but what are your thoughts on, as sort of if we were to transition animals from farms and stop breeding them, having alternative uses that are adaptive for animals? I mean, farm sanctuaries are one way, right, where we can still, people can generate income from animals by having people come and visit farm sanctuaries. So yeah, what do you think about alternate uses that reduce harm but still involve animals?
So it's a complicated issue. I know there's a sanctuary in Ireland, Eden Farm Sanctuary. You've heard of that? Sandra Higgins. She doesn't allow people to visit the animals. She doesn't allow people to take pictures with the animals because she sees it as use. Who am I to disagree with her? She knows those animals better than me. But at the same time, I think, and this is not a criticism, it's a personal decision on her part, I suppose. I think sanctuaries are a great place where people can connect with animals. So I've spoken to people with sanctuaries in America who do allow families to come and spend time with the animals. And I think she said it was turkeys are the one animal that people connect with and make that connection that they go, right, okay, I'm going to leave animals alone. Because when people spend time around animals, which most people never ever do, most people live in an urban environment, and their interaction with animals is dogs and cats. Well, if you allow those people to spend time around chickens and pigs and sheep and cows, they will very quickly realize that each one of those animals is, people see this herd, they're all the same. I think that's the perception. You spend time around those animals, you will realize that each and every one of them have their own individual personality. And the people who will tell you this are farmers. I've spoken to cow farmers who will tell you, this cow is friendly with that cow, this cow likes to spend time with those ones, doesn't like that one. They absolutely know that animals are individuals. So I can see it both ways. I would have to sit and think about it more. I see both arguments in that, and I guess it would depend on the individual animals. Obviously, if you were bringing people in and it was upsetting the animals, that would be an issue. But if the animals are okay with people coming to say hello to them and speak to them and spend time with them, I wouldn't really have an issue with it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a hard question.
Yeah, I don't see taking a picture of an animal and posting it online as exploitation. I don't. Anybody else? Had you a question?
Hi, Clif. Thanks for coming to speak to us. Really enjoyed your talk. I just wanted to see what you think about the many socialists, environmentalists, and feminists even that choose to not be vegan. You see quite a lot of this negative chat online from people on the left who refuse to be vegan and come up with any kind of excuse to not be vegan. I find it quite bizarre.
It is bizarre. I've been talking to Jess about this all day, about intersection and all sorts. It's difficult. I mean, like I say, I'm very principled, okay? So I find it very difficult for me, I know society sees speciesism as on a different level to racism and sexism and homophobia and all that stuff. I would hold intersectional views. For sure, I hold intersectional views, but when I am doing activism, I am laser focused on the animals, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't see that because the animals have so few people speaking for them, and it's immensely difficult for me to, this may seem controversial, I'll just be honest, if we're talking about a human rights issue, it's immensely difficult for me to go to a human rights issue and see somebody beside me. Here's the way I see it. If you went to a Cube of Truth, right, and somebody was being openly racist, that Cube of Truth, what would happen? They'd be asked to leave, right? So I find it difficult to go to a human rights event or an environmental event, and like the person beside you could be wearing somebody's skin or literally eating somebody's body parts, and everybody's completely fine with it. And I'm like, I'm gonna call that person out. And oftentimes you can't do that because I've tried it and it goes down like a lead balloon. So yeah, human beings never fail, present company excluded, human beings never fail to disappoint me. And it's a struggle in my mind every single day. I guess we just have to try and see the good in people and try and bring them on board as best as we can, because the animals depend on that. So it's frustrating. Thank you very much.